How's it going, Can Crushers? Welcome to another episode of the Crushing Cans podcast pre-fight pick'em show. Tonight, we're talking about UFC Vegas 9, Overeem versus Sakai. This should be a great fight card from top to bottom. There's a lot of good fights on the card. Let's dive right into it. The first fight of the night is Cole Smith versus Hunter Azure at 135 pounds. Cole Smith weighed in at 135 pounds and Hunter weighed in at 135.5 pounds. Cole, the Cole-trained Smith, he's a Canadian. He's 7-1 in MMA. He's 31 years old, 5 feet 11 inches tall, and he has a 67-inch reach. He's currently 1-1 in the UFC, coming off of a split decision loss to Miles Johns. Before that, he beat Mitch Gannon in his UFC debut by decision. He's the former BFL 135-pound champion, and he successfully defended that belt 2 times. Cole has 3 submission wins, 2 decision wins, and 2 knockout wins on his record currently. His only loss is that split decision loss that came to Miles Johns in his last fight. Now he's going against Hunter Azure, who made his way into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, where he defeated his opponent by decision. Hunter is currently 1-1 in the UFC. He defeated Brad Katona by decision in his UFC debut, and then he lost to Brian Kelleher by knockout in the second round. Hunter is also the former 145-pound FFL champion. He has 4 decision wins on his record, 3 knockout wins on his record, and 1 submission win. I expect Cole Smith to come out there and use his length and try to take down Hunter early on in the fight. I think Hunter's going to have the striking advantage in this fight. Cole is the taller fighter. He's a long guy, but Hunter is not that much smaller than him. And I expect that Hunter will be able to outbox him, stop the takedowns, because I didn't really think that they were that great from Cole. We'll see what happens in this fight, but I predict Hunter Azure to win by decision. Now we move on to the heavyweight division. We have Marcos Rogerio de Lima versus Alexander Romanov. De Lima has 17 wins, 7 losses, and 1 draw on his record. He's 35 years old, 6 feet 1 inches tall with a 75-inch reach. De Lima is currently 6-4 in the UFC, coming off of a first-round knockout over Ben Sassoli on February 22nd earlier this year. However, he hasn't had back-to-back wins in the UFC since his first 2 fights in the UFC. Pizzoa is the second person to ever beat Paulo Filho, who was at one point the #1 ranked guy in the world. The first person was Chael Sonnen. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he also competed on Tough Brazil, where Chael Sonnen was actually his coach. While he is a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, he definitely prefers to strike with 12 knockouts on his record and only 3 submissions and 2 decision wins. He's looking to knock people out and put them to sleep. However, De Lima has been submitted 4 times, knocked out once, and lost by decision 1 time in his MMA career as well. Now he faces off against Moldova's King Kong, Alexander Romanov. Alexander's 11-0 in MMA. He's 29 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, and he's making his UFC debut. So he's had a little bit of a hard time trying to get a fight going at this point. He was originally scheduled to face Rafael Pizzoa, but that fight was scheduled due to COVID. And then he was changed to fight against Marcin Tybura, and that was supposed to be on July 11th. Unfortunately, at that time, Romanov tested positive for the coronavirus and was pulled from that fight. He's the former EFC interim heavyweight champion, and he's 11-0. with 7 submission wins and 4 knockout wins on his record. Alexander Romanov's never gone to decision. He's looking to keep it this way in this fight. I predict Alexander Romanov to submit De Lima in the 2nd round. Now we move on to the 3rd fight of the night. This is the #12 ranked Montana De La Rosa versus the #8 ranked Viviane Araujo. De La Rosa is an American. She's 11-5 in MMA, 25 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall with a 68-inch reach. She made her way into the UFC through the Ultimate Fighter House, where she went 1-1, defeating Ariel Beck by submission and then losing to Nico Montano by decision. Since then, she's gone 4-1 in the UFC. Most recently, she defeated Mara Romero Barillo by decision. Before that, she lost to Andrea Lee, and that's her only loss inside of the UFC. Andrea Lee is KBG. She's a tough girl, so, you know, that was a really close fight. In fact, that was a decision loss right there, and it was back and forth altogether. So, you know, she's been in all of her fights right now at this point. Since joining the UFC, she defeated Nadia Kassim by submission in round 2. She also defeated Rachel Ostrovich by rear naked choke in round 3. And she submitted Christina Marks by armbar in round 1. Montana has 9 submission wins to her record and 3 submission wins. She's lost by decision twice, split decision once, and she's been submitted 1 time by Mackenzie Dern, who's known for her submission grappling game. She's also been knocked out 1 time, and that was from Cynthia Calvillo back in her days with LFA. Viviane Araujo, she's 8-2 in MMA. She's a Brazilian, 33 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall with a 68-inch reach. She's 2-1 in the UFC. Most recently, she lost a decision to Jessica Evil Eye. She knocked out Talita Bernardo, and she also beat Alexa Davis by decision inside the UFC. Viviane's also the former Pancration strawweight champion. She has 4 submission wins, 3 knockout wins, and 1 decision win to her record. In her losses, she's lost 1 time by decision and 1 time by knockout. In this fight, I predict Montana to take down Viviane pretty early in the fight and start working the ground game. I do predict that this fight will go a long way. I think the fight's going to make it all the way to the 3rd round. There's going to be some good striking exchanges there between the girls in this fight. But ultimately, Montana's going to take her down, and she's going to work for her submissions throughout the fight. And I believe that she will catch that submission in the 3rd round. Now we move on to the 4th fight of the night. This one is Bartosz Fabinski versus Andre Muniz at 185 pounds. The Butcher Bartosz, he's from Poland. He's 15-3 and 34 years old. He's 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach, and he's 3-1 inside of the UFC. 4-1 if you include a recent Cage Warriors fight with Darren Stewart. So originally he was scheduled to fight another opponent on the UFC, but the event was canceled due to COVID. Darren Stewart and the Butcher were matched up in Cage Warriors after that for some reason, and then Bartosz actually beat him there. Both of those guys are still under contract with the UFC. The UFC just moved that fight to Cage Warriors to get those guys a fight. Then those guys come back to the UFC, and since then, you know, Edwards has a win there. So they never really left the UFC. It was just a kind of a thing that they did to make COVID work with all this stuff here. All 3 of his wins in the UFC have come by decision. He has wins over Emil Meek, Hector Urbina, and Gareth McLellan inside the UFC. Bartosz is the former PL MMA 185-pound champion. He's the Octagon MMA tournament champion as well. Currently, Bartosz has 8 knockouts and 7 decisions on his record. He's been submitted 2 times and he's lost by decision 1 time. Now he's going against Andre Sergipano Muniz. Andre's from Brazil and he's 19-4 in MMA. He's 30 years old, 6 feet 4 inches tall, and he has a 71-inch reach. He's 30 years old, 6 feet 1 inches tall, and has a 78-inch reach. He competed 2 times on Dana White's Contender Series. The first time he won by decision over Bruno Assis. The second time he fought on Dana White's Contender Series, he fought Taylor Johnson, who he submitted in the 1st round. Since then, he's gone 1-0 in the UFC, defeating Antonio Arroyo by decision. He's currently on a 5-fight win streak, and he hasn't lost a fight since 2016. He started competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at age 15, and he's got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well. He's been practicing in Muay Thai for about as long as he's been doing Jiu-Jitsu, and he really likes to try to mix those things together. He has 12 submission wins, 4 knockout wins, and 2 decision wins on his record. He has, however, been knocked out 4 times in his career. In this fight, though, I predict Andre Muniz to win by submission in the 1st round. Alright, now we move on to the first fight of the main card. This is Brian Boom Kelleher versus Kevin Natividad at 135 pounds. This was originally scheduled as Brian Kelleher versus Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone's a local Vancouver, Washington guy where I'm at right now. One of his corners ended up testing positive for the coronavirus and they pulled him from the fight. This happened a couple of weeks ago. I don't know why they pulled him. We had situations before where other fighters, George Masvidal, his corner tests positive for the coronavirus. And I know everybody says, oh, they weren't together. You know, they weren't around each other. But the reality of it is they were around each other. Masvidal's admitted it. 3 other teammates tested positive, and he was still able to stay on the fight for some reason. Yet, Ricky gets pulled off of his fight when one of his corners tests positive. Not Ricky himself. Brian Boom Kelleher, he's 21-11 in MMA. He's an American. He's 34 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, and has a 64-inch reach. He's 5-4 inside of the UFC, most recently coming off of a decision loss to Cody Stamann. For significant wins, he beat former UFC champion Renan Barão by decision. He also has a first-round guillotine win over Yuri Alcantara in his UFC debut. Prior to signing with the UFC, Brian Kelleher was the 135-pound Ring of Combat champion. He was also the 145-pound WC MMA champion as well. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu with 9 submissions, 8 knockouts, and 4 decision wins on his record. He has been submitted 4 times and lost by decision 4 times, but he's only been knocked out once in all of his fights. Now he's going against short notice replacement Quicksand Kevin Natividad. Kevin is an American and he's 9-1 in professional MMA. He also went 13-1 as an amateur. He's 27 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall with a 70.5-inch reach. This will be his UFC debut, but he's currently on a 5-fight win streak. He also has an amateur win over UFC fighter Kai Kamaka, who made it into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series. Kevin has 5 knockouts, 3 decisions, and 1 submission win on his record right now. In his most recent fight, he defeated Kyle Estrada. That was July 17th, 2020, so he should be in pretty good shape and ready to go. He currently has 5 knockout wins, 3 decision wins, and 1 submission win on his record. His only loss does come from a knockout. For this fight, I predict Brian Kelleher to knock out Kevin Natividad in the 2nd round. Alright, so now we move on to the next fight. This one is Thiago Moises versus Jalin Turner at 155 pounds. Thiago Moises, he's a Brazilian, 13-4 in MMA, and 25 years old. He's 5 feet 9 inches tall, has a 70.5-inch reach, and he's 2-2 in the UFC, most recently coming out with a 2nd round ankle lock submission win over Michael Johnson. Both of his losses in the UFC are by decision. One of them comes to Beneil Dariush. He made his way into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series after he knocked out his opponent Gleitson Cutis in the 1st round. He's the former RFA 155-pound champion, and he successfully defended that belt twice. Moises has 6 submission wins, 4 decision wins, and 3 knockout wins on his record. All 4 of his losses have come by decision. Moises will face the Tarantula Jalin Turner. Jalin Turner actually gets his name, the Tarantula, not from his long length that he has, but from the fact that he was afraid of spiders as he was growing up, and as a way to get over his arachnophobia, he started collecting tarantulas. By the time he made his UFC debut, he supposedly had over 200 tarantulas. So Jalin's an American, he's 9-5 in MMA, he's 25 years old, and he's 6 feet 3 inches tall. He has a 75.5-inch reach right now, so he'll enjoy a 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. And he's 2-2 in the UFC right now, most recently coming off a 2nd round knockout over Joshua Kuliboa. Jalin also made his way into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series. In his fight, his opponent broke his foot in the 1st round. Jalin still got the contract. He also has 2 wins in Bellator. Both of those wins come by knockout. He's supposedly a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but I don't really believe it. I've seen some real technical issues with him. If you watch his last fight, there's things like not sinking the hook, looking for chokes that aren't real chokes, and I just don't necessarily believe in that brown belt that he supposedly has. Of his 9 wins, 8 of those have come by knockout. 1 of them is a submission win. Jalin has been knocked out 3 times, and he's lost by decision twice as well. Neither of these fighters have put together back-to-back wins inside of the UFC. Both of these fighters will be looking to do that for the first time. The person that I believe will walk away with their first 2-fight win streak inside of the UFC is Thiago Moises. I believe that he will submit Jalin Turner in the 2nd round. Alright, so now we move on to the next fight of the card. This is Michel Pereira versus Zelim Imadaev at 170 pounds. Michel Pereira, he's Brazilian. He has 23 wins on his record, 11 losses. He's 26 years old. He's 6 feet 1 inches tall, has a 73-inch reach, and he's 1-2 in the UFC. He's currently on a 2-fight losing streak, one of those being due to an illegal knee to Diego Sanchez in the 3rd round, and the other one was by decision to Tristan Connolly. He did win his UFC debut over Danny Roberts with a flying knee and then a punch afterwards that put him down. He's a capoeira-style fighter, likes to throw a lot of fancy kicks. You'll see him jump up off the cage a little bit. He does get a little bit wild and crazy. It's fan-friendly, but it's not good as far as conserving energy and pushing through into the further rounds. If Michel Pereira can't put him out in the 1st round, then it might be a bad night for him because of how much energy he exerts early on. He's the former SBC 170-pound champion, and he has 10 knockouts on his record right now. He also has 8 decision wins and 5 submission wins on his record as well. In his 11 losses, 8 of those have come by decision, 1 of them has come by submission, and then the other one came from disqualification due to that illegal knee. Now he goes against Zelim Imadaev from Russia, and Zelim, he is 8-2. He's 25 years old, 6 feet tall, and has a 76-inch reach, so he'll enjoy a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's 0-2 in the UFC, losing by knockout in the second round to Danny Roberts, and also losing by decision to Max Griffin. All 8 of Zelim's wins have come by knockout. I predict this to be a stand-up striking fight between the two of these guys here. They both like to throw a lot of punches. I do think that Pereira is going to connect early on. I think that he's going to catch Zelim and put him down on the ground, and he's going to win with the knockout in the very first round. Now we move on to the co-main event of the night. This is Ovince Preux versus Alonzo Menifield at 205 pounds. Now this fight was originally scheduled for August 22nd. OSP actually tested positive for the coronavirus on the day of the fight, and he was pulled from that fight, and they rescheduled it to this fight card here. Now let's jump into these fighters a little bit. OSP, Ovince Preux, he's from Haiti, and he's 24-14 in MMA. He's 37 years old, 6 feet 3 inches tall, and he's 14-7 in the UFC, most recently coming off of a split decision loss to Ben Rothwell. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights, and he's 5-5 in his last 10. He has 9 decision losses, 3 submission losses, and 2 knockout losses on his record. He has some pretty good significant wins on his record. He has a 3rd-round knockout win over Corey Anderson. He has a 1st-round submission win over Yushin Okami, who at one time was considered one of the best in the world, one of the first people to ever beat Anderson Silva. He also has a 1st-round knockout over Mauricio Shogun Rua. One thing that OSP has brought to the world of MMA that he's done really well is he's got this Von Flue choke down. Guys like to tie up with him. They go down to the ground, and he'll catch him in a position where it's almost like these guys are trying to guillotine him. But at the time, really what's happening is OSP is setting up his Von Flue choke, and he does it often. He does it a lot. He's currently a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, and he played college football at the University of Tennessee. He has 11 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 5 decisions on his record right now. Now he's going against Alonzo Menifield. He's 9-1 in MMA, and he went 2-0 on Dana White's Contender Series before getting signed to the UFC. His first fight, he won in between the round due to a doctor stoppage, and then in his second fight, he knocked his opponent out in just 8 seconds and got his contract to the UFC. Since signing with the UFC, he's gone 2-1, coming off of a decision loss to Devin Clark, but he does have 2 first-round knockout wins in the UFC over Vinicius Moreira and Paul Craig. Overall, he has 7 knockouts and 2 submissions to his record. He's another guy that played college football. He played junior college ball, JUCO ball at Glendale Community College, and then he also played at Texas A&M. After that, he played in the CFL for a little while, and now here he is in the UFC. However, I don't think that Alonzo Menifield's really going to know enough about jiu-jitsu and about what's going on to stop the Von Flue choke. There's been a lot of other guys. Everybody knows it's coming, and he still seems to get it. I think that Alonzo Menifield is going to throw punches, and when he throws heavy punches, he likes to lunge forward. That takes him out of position a little bit, and that will close that distance there. And what's going to happen is OSP is going to tie up with him, and he's going to drag him down to the ground somehow. He might do it from the body, he might change down to the legs, but he's going to take it down to the ground and immediately start looking to set up another Von Flue choke. I don't think a guy like Alonzo Menifield, while a great athlete, knows enough about the ground. I think he spent a lot of time working more on his hands, and I think OSP comes home with another win. He's going to submit him in the second round. All right, now we move on to the main event. Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai at 265 pounds. First, let's talk about Alistair, the Demolition Man, Overeem. Alistair Overeem, he was born in England and he trains out of the Netherlands. He has 46 wins, 18 losses, and only 1 no contest to his record right now. He went 10-3 in kickboxing before transitioning to MMA. Overeem is 40 years old and 6 feet 4 inches tall. He has an 80-inch reach, and he's gone 11-7 inside of the UFC, including challenging for a UFC title. In his last fight, he defeated Walt Harris by knockout in the second round. Before coming to the UFC, he was a Dream heavyweight champion. He was also a Strikeforce heavyweight champion. He was a Pride legend where he went 7-7 inside of Pride. And during his time in Pride, he beat Vitor Belfort. He also beat Igor Vovchanchin, who was a great kickboxer, who between kickboxing and MMA, he had over 130 fights, and 117 of those were wins. Overeem also has wins over guys like Brock Lesnar, Mark Hunt, Fabricio Verdum, Andrei Arlovsky, Junior Dos Santos, Roy Nelson, and Alexei Oleinik. He has 24 knockout wins on his record and 17 submission wins, and he only has 5 decision wins on his record. However, he has been knocked out 14 times, and he's lost by decision 3 times, and he's only been submitted once. Now, he goes against Augusto Sakai, who's 11 years younger, 29 years old. He's Brazilian. He has 15 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw to his record. He's 6 feet 3 inches tall and 4-0 in the UFC. He made his way to the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, where he knocked his opponent out in the 2nd round. Inside the UFC, he has 2 split decision wins, and he has 2 knockout wins over Marcin Tybura and Chase Sherman. Before coming to the UFC, Sakai also competed in Bellator, where he had 4 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. Overall, he has 11 knockouts and 4 decision wins on his record. His only loss is a split decision loss to Czech Congo. Augusto Sakai is also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. Given the fact that Alistair Overeem's been knocked out 14 times, I don't think that he's really going to want to stand with Augusto Sakai, even though I think that Alistair Overeem is the far superior striker. I don't think Augusto Sakai is anywhere near Overeem's level, but at the heavyweight division, it only takes 1. And as Sakai has proven, he has the ability to knock you out with 1 punch. So I think that Overeem is going to look to take it to the ground, where he's been successful many times before. And I think that eventually, coming in the 3rd round, Alistair Overeem is going to submit Augusto Sakai. Well, that's it for tonight's show. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to crush some cans, can crushers.